Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. The British Touring Car Championship came to an end for 2024 a week ago at Brands Hatch, and we got a new champion in Jake Hill. But it is once again time to look at every driver who took part in the BTCC in 2024 and grade their season's performance on a tier list. Only 22 drivers this year, the lowest amount since 2005 when there was only 18 drivers all year, and all but 3 completed the whole season. These grades will be based on their performances in 2024 compared to previous performances in the British touring cars, and generally just taking into account how the season went for each driver. So to the person who got angry last year because I put Colin Turkington in F grade, it was because his 2023 campaign was a lot worse than many of his previous campaigns, and by Turkington's very high standards, it was just an F grade year. With that out of the way, make sure you subscribe and let's jump into the video. BMW. We start with BMW, and to make that same person very angry again 1 year on, this was an F grade year for Colin Turkington. Not really, obviously, it was slightly better than 2023, if only a little. But again, he wasn't really in championship contention and was the second best BMW driver of the year, behind Jake Hill. It is worth remembering that Colin Turkington hasn't finished outside of the top 5 in the championship since 2005, so if you think I'm grading him too lowly, it's only because of the incredibly high standard he has set for himself. Alright, I'll upgrade him to a D. F grade will be reserved for when he finishes outside the top 5 and runs over someone's cat. Jake Hill, obviously S tier. Not just because he was the champion, but also because he took 8 wins and was on the podium in more than half of the races in 2024. And still he had to work hard to win the championship. Not bad for a driver who only took his first win 5 years ago, in a year he finished 15th overall in an Audi. His rise to the top has been meteoric. Adam Morgan had a dismal year on paper. He got caught up in a couple of crashes, no wins all year, only 1 podium, and yet he still managed to finish 8th overall and helped BMW to the manufacturer's title. It's pretty much on par with every other Adam Morgan season ever, so I'll put him in C grade. Our final BMW driver is Bobby Thompson, who of course only turned up for 3 races at Snetterton, much to my disappointment because I think he is a really good driver. He was on form despite missing the majority of the season, a second place and then demoted from second in race 2. He is such a good driver who deserves a decent full-time drive. If he doesn't get one in 2025, I'm going to riot. Or maybe I'll just moan about it on the internet. Bobby Thompson is going in the B category. Cupra. Jumping to the other end of the field, the Cupras were much reduced for this year, only 3 on the grid and only 1 in the hands of Team Hard. Darryl De Leon in his first full season was pretty good. I mean, he was as good as the Cupra allowed him to be, considering it's not on the pace of anything else in the BTCC. He wasn't a million miles behind Chris Smiley, and overall gave a good account of himself. Whilst only getting a couple of top 10s all year, I guess a D grade with room for improvement, but with an asterisk next to it acknowledging the Cupra's lack of performance. Chris Smiley was top Cupra, but he only finished in the top 10 3 times. It is his worst finish in the BTCC since 2017, and again, whilst the cause is for Cupra, it's still an E for the former race winner. And Scott Sumpton and his debut year, it was spent entirely at the back of the field. The only positive is he beat Nick Halstead, which is like beating a blind man in competitive hide and seek. He still scored less in 30 races than Bobby Thompson managed in 3. So for poor Scott Sumpton, it's an F. Vauxhall. Only 2 drivers for Vauxhall and they both won championships. Not only did Evans Halshaw Powermax Racing win the Independent Teams title, but Aaron Taylor-Smith dominated the Independence Championship and Mikey Doble won the Jack Sears Trophy. Aaron Taylor-Smith was quality all year. Lacking outright pace, he still finished every race in 2024 in the points and 7th overall. No wins but a couple of podiums, and the majority of the races were finished in the top 10. This was also his best ever season at the 11th attempt. So this was an A grade year. Mikey Doble also finished in the points at the majority of races and made a couple of cameos near the front. Second place at Alton Park is the team's best result of the year. It was a good second year that showed improvement and is therefore worthy of a B. Toyota. As I said in my review of the final races, Toyota have been really disappointing in 2024, not quite on the pace of the top teams. They did still take a few wins and Josh Cook could have been champion going into the final weekend. Otherwise, this was a pretty standard Cook year. He took wins, was around the championship fight but not really quite in it, and another 6th overall. He's a good driver, and if Toyota can improve and challenge BMW, Hyundai and Ford, then Josh Cook is championship winning quality. As for 2024 though, as I said, it was a pretty typical Josh Cook season, so he's going in C rank. Rob Huff returned to the series full time for the first time in 20 years and did pretty much what I thought he would. Took his first wins since his Seat days and was generally a menace at times, but he never consistently managed to challenge at the front and spent most of his time in the midfield. Another season to shake off those cobwebs though, and this former world champion will be a title threat. Again, if Toyota can give him the tools to do it. B grade year for Rob Huff and looking forward to his S grade year in 2025. Aidan Moffat did take a win early in the year and then subsequently failed to finish in the top 10 at most of the remaining races. I thought this could have been a good year for Moffat. He's only ever finished in the top 10 in the championship once before in 2021. And I thought in this quality field, he could have got a top 10. He did not. So this is an E. And Andrew Watson, he was a real standout in 2023. I thought he could go on and do big things at Toyota this year. He's been terrible. He did actually score more points this year, but seeing as he's moved from an independent Vauxhall to a works Toyota, I was expecting more. He hasn't finished higher than 5th all year, rarely in the top 10, quite a few crashes sprinkled in. It really has not been a good second year for Watson. It's an F. Hyundai. The team with the largest amount of drivers in 2024 was the Bristol Street Hyundai team with 5. Nick Halstead is awful. 63 races for a total of 2 points. His best finish in 2024 was 13th, and he only finished in the points 3 times. In a field that pays points to the top 15, and there was rarely more than 20 cars, last in the championship again, it's an F. It should be lower than an F. It's a Z. Ronan Pearson took his first win and was replaced later in the year, so a good and a bad, but he wasn't doing anything special in the championship anyway, so a D, and only because he took that win. His replacement Dan Zelos only had 9 races to impress, and impress he did. Nothing too flashy, there was no grand results, but he finished every race and finished it in the points. I really want to see him back in 2025, so that has to be worthy of an A. Tom Chilton is one of the most experienced drivers involved. This was his 18th BTCC season. He took another win to bring his total to 16 in over 500 races. He was never adequate backup to Tom Ingram though. Always in the midfield, 10th overall isn't terrible, but Ingram could have used his help at times. It's a C. And as for Tom Ingram, he did everything but win the championship. 6 more wins, that's 33 in 326, a little better than Chilton. And this is the most points Tom Ingram has scored in a season, more than his championship winning year. So he did everything but win the title, falling just 9 points short. But he is still in S tier. Why, you ask? That drive at Donington Park, where he went from last to 2nd place. That is why he is S tier. Ford. And finally, Ford. Sam Osborne is a team director, hence why he can take a seat at Napa Ford, despite being incredibly average on a good weekend and kind of shit the rest of the time. He did have his best ever season, scoring way more points than he ever has before, but with less cars, that is something that should have happened. Not really on the pace of his teammates, in fact, he's nowhere near the pace of his teammates. It was decent by normal Sam Osborne standards, and it's not like I was expecting much more from him, so he can be a D. Dan Rowbottom, I did expect a lot more from. No wins, he's moved backwards down the field. He wasn't that far ahead of Sam Osborne. He was no help to Ford in the manufacturers, and you can also blame him entirely for BMW winning the championship. It's an F grade year for Mr. Rowbottom. Dan Camish was in championship contention at the end of the year, but he only won 1 race. But he finished in the points at every race and had his best season since moving to Ford. Remember, it's only a brake issue that stops Dan Camish from winning a championship a few years ago. He is very capable at running at the top of the field. B grade, and another who could be a real title contender in 2025. Our final driver is Ash Sutton. Given how dominant he has been over the last 4 or 5 years, finishing 60 points away from the championship winning Jake Hill will be a huge disappointment. 3rd in the championship is his lowest finish since his final Subaru year in 2019, and he has been hampered with more issues and crashes this year. He has looked invincible at times, not so much in 2024. It's hardly an F grade year, but given Sutton's high standards, it has to be an E from me. Again, being so far away from Jake Hill is part of the reason Ford lost to BMW in the Constructors' Championship. But knowing Sutton, that'll be motivation for 2025. He could be the BTCC's first 5-time champion in 2025. So that is my tier list for every BTCC driver in 2024. Do you agree or do you disagree? Who would you move around on this list? Have I been harsh to some of these drivers? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe for more motorsport content. This is probably the last time we will talk about the BTCC this year, but soon we will be talking about 2025. Thank you very much for watching and have a good one.